Good morning. Happy Friday. This is Axel Merk, President Chief Investment Officer of Merk Investments. What a difference a day makes. We talk in the morning before things go bad, and then we talk the next morning when things are good again. Yes, I'll give you some rundown, some thoughts here in a second. S&P futures are currently up 65. That makes the Dow up 750. Gold is up 21. No, that is not gold. Gold is up 970 at 1737, 1736 right now. The euro is at 113 even. 10-year is at 71 basis points. That's down 12 ticks. The 30-year is down a point and 15 ticks. The 3-month T-bills are at 17 basis points, 3-month LIBOR at 32, Fed effective Fed funds rate at 7 basis points. The VIX index is at 35 basis points, and the VIX curve is inverted. VIX curve inverted means that you're more fearful of the present than of the future. The dollar is weaker versus the commodity currencies. The Canadian dollar is the strongest at up 51 basis points. Australian dollars up 41 basis points. The currencies down versus the dollar are mostly, not in the G10 anyway, mostly the quote unquote safe havens. The yen is down 52 basis points. The Swiss franc down 38 basis points. Sterling is also down, with the euro just about flat, as I mentioned before. International markets, Euro Stocks is up 1.46% right now. FTSE is up 1.5%. And so European markets are up. The Nikkei, Asian markets obviously closed before we had much of the rally. Now, the Nikkei was down 75 basis points. Hong Kong down 73. CSI 300 in China was up 18 basis points, and Australia was also down 1.9%. So where are we here? And just look here at the emerging currencies. The Mexican peso is the strongest this morning, up 2.5%, and the weakest, the Brazilian real, at down 74 basis points. And that's emerging markets is a huge spectrum. I don't have all of them on the board here that I'm following, and so that's just the sliver that I look at, and I'll give you the disclosure today. I promise to take it away again, so you get to see my pretty face in a second again. So what happened yesterday? As I've mentioned numerous times, is the media, when risk assets do well, they focus on everything that's great, and when risk assets are poor, then the glass is half empty, and suddenly all the stories come out why things are bad. And really, fundamentally, not so much has changed. Obviously the thing that had changed was Powell giving his opinion on what's going to happen, and obviously he doesn't doesn't just have an opinion. He has a bazooka, but he said he's going to keep rates low for a long period until he's not afraid of inflation and whatnot. And so that didn't give a boost to the market, so maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe printing 80 billion a month isn't enough. And then, of course, we've had various statistics come out that there might be a flare up in COVID cases. And one of the better commentaries I heard was from a former FDA commissioner on CNBC, and he said that a place like Texas didn't really have a pandemic. And as a result, and he was speculating, people didn't take the outbreak as seriously. And because of that, now it's starting to spread more. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of self-control that happens as we hear everything is flaring up again. We might be reducing our social interactions again, and that will help. And so I still believe that we're going to have this back and forth, where we're going to kind of have these localized outbreaks. And of course, the one thing that has changed very substantially is that the testing has been ramped up. And so, and also not just as the testing ramped up, the tracing as well. If and when there is an outbreak somewhere, people are going to go there and trying to find all the pieces that are around. And the question is whether you can do that systematically enough to contain the virus, to keep that. Our star, the or not the less than one, the spreading of the virus. And so we'll see. We'll see how that's going to happen. But make back to kind of more the broader market action. We did breach through the 200-day moving average, and I'm not suggesting that means too much, except that yes, we breached it, and there are a lot of technicians out there. Usually, in the good old times, you would have a retest of the lows, um, and it's in recent years, nothing really has happened the way they happened in the quote unquote good old times. I don't know whether they were good, but in the old times at least, and so it remains to be seen. I mean, it's one of these things again. If the market continued to rally back up to new highs from here, then with hindsight, yeah, great. And if they retest the lows, then they says, yeah, I told you so, right? And so it comes back to this that investors need to have a process. You need to figure out what you want to do and when. Just kind of guessing things. Yeah, good luck with that. Um, so then, in other news, oh, let me go off on a tangent here since it is Friday. There was, and this isn't necessarily too market related, but there were stories out how pilots have issues with planes being much lighter, how on takeoff the tail may be scratching the runway, and how pressurization may not work because they're climbing too fast, the pressurization doesn't keep up, and this and this and this. Um, it is not like there is suddenly an explosion in incidents. What's happening, and some journalists decided to dig into it, there is a reporting tool that aviation has, not just general aviation, but commercial aviation as well. The FAA has a reporting tool where you can report incidents, safety advisories. And there is a fairly broad immunity that's given to pilot who submits something. Imagine that you violate a rule and then you self-report. Then there are exceptions to that, but there is an immunity that's given to you. And the reason that's done is that it helps the system to become more secure if you report incident. And so you can report minor things when the controller was asleep or you were asleep not doing something, and you assigned an altitude, and then you didn't fly at that altitude. Well, that's a violation, right? And that could get you in trouble. And if you're a commercial airline pilot, you don't want to have that on your record. And so the system is in place so that if you've had an incident and if you don't get reprimanded by the FAA, you have a kind of a grace period where you can submit a ticket and saying, hey, listen, and one of the incidents was there was a plane that had to do a go around and applied full power and take off. And guess what? They zoomed up and they zoomed higher than the assigned altitude and botched that, so to speak. And so they attributed it to the light weight. In any case, yes, of course, the aircraft is handling differently when it's lighter. And so it does happen. These things happen. And so these sort of pieces, these sort of databases are a tremendous part of the safety mechanism that's provided to aviation. And it allows a feedback loop where the FAA then can issue cautionary notes if they think that this is an issue that's bigger than just the pilot being asleep and missing an altitude, for example. And so obviously, if there are more systemic issues arising, then other measures might need to be taken. But overall, I think it's a very healthy sign that pilots report these sort of things for the benefit of the system. And yes, by all means, an aircraft that is lightly loaded behaves very differently from a heavy loaded plane. So why the heck do I mention this when I'm supposed to talk about the markets? Well, because it's Friday and I'm an aviation enthusiast, in case you guys haven't noticed. And so that's really the reason. I don't think and this is certainly not an opinion about any of the airlines. So since you listen to this, thank you. Give me feedback of what you want to hear and whether you like me to continue giving these daily updates or whether you would like me to only give an update when something dramatic happens in the markets, or stick to other things we do. We do our webinars, we have our research reports, we do all kinds of other things as well. They all have their plus and minuses, and if I do give a daily update, yeah, maybe sometimes I go off on a tangent here and might tell you about aviation or other things. Anyway, with that said, have a great weekend. Be safe out there. Take care. Bye.